And these people in Cooks, they didn't have the facilities or the ability to cope with what was about to happen.
And you came out of Kosovo and started covering the war from Albania, from Bayram Curi.
First we went to Belgrade. On the evening of the bombing, I was working quite closely with Ron Hviv, and Ron Hviv had a death sentence on him by Arkan.
Because of the photo he did of Arkan.
Yeah, because of the kicking Muslims, dead Muslims in the streets of Bijeljina picture. So, and Arkan had publicly stated on state television that he was going to drink the blood of the photographer who did this. Anyway, so we heard rumors on the evening before the bombing in Pristina that Arkan had brought himself and his troops to Pristina. And I was still in, am I going to stay in the bombing or am I going to go? I really didn't know what to do personally for myself. And as Ron doesn't drive, and he was always, anyway, hanging out with me, that was, the decision was made for me, you know, I was going to take Ron out of Pristina, so we went to Belgrade, only to find out that actually Arkan was in the same restaurant in the hotel that we walked into. He was actually there in the restaurant, he wasn't in Pristina at that day. So after spending a couple of days in Belgrade, I think it was Vučić or Šešelj who kicked all the foreign press out of Serbia. We went to Zagreb, and then from Zagreb down the coast to Dubrovnik and back into Podgorica. And from Podgorica we were going up to Rajaj, to the border with Kosovo, and photographing people, Kosovars being thrown out of Pea and all of that region. And I think we spent maybe 19 days in Montenegro before crossing into Albania in the south and going all the way up to Cooks.
So how was the atmosphere in Cooks, in Bayram Curi in particular?
Well,
what happened to you in
Cooks? Poor, you know, I mean, the poor people, both Kosovars and the residents of Cooks, you know, it's remote. There was no motorways up there. It took almost 2 days to drive from the coast to get all the way up to northern Albania. And these people in Cooks, they didn't have the facilities or the ability to cope with what was about to happen. And on a day after day, you know, the amount of people that were crossing that border increased every single day. Fortunately, the international community was able, with UNHCR and all the other agencies, were flying stuff in with helicopters. I mean, there was not enough food, there was no tents, there was at the very beginning, there was nothing. These people came in their tractors and they slept in their tractors. And if they hadn't brought with them the food that they could carry, they wouldn't have been able to eat.
Having been there myself during these 3 months of bombing, I know it was very difficult to cover the war because our equipment were being stolen in the hills next to Bayram Curi. How did you cope with this, and how did you navigate as a journalist this security situation, an additional to the refugee crisis going on and to the expulsion of Kosovo Albanians by the Serbs?
Although northern Albania was very much out of control of any government of Albania at the time, Cooks was relatively safe and free to work and do. But if you wanted or needed to look outside of the refugee crisis and were looking to do something more with what the KLA was doing during that time, then you had to go to Bayram Curi, because that's where that was operating. And
how was Bayram Curi?
It was always a gamble. It's like Russian roulette almost, because the chances of being robbed and losing all your equipment, your vehicles, or even worse cases, were very high. If you were going to go to Bayram Curi and work out of the hotel which was called Hotel Smell of the Mountains. I remember going there once much earlier, and they had to get the goats out of the hotel so they could open the hotel for us. A completely crazy place.